What is business analysis?
It is a process and a set of activities aimed at studying, analyzing, identifying and solving business problems and tasks in an organization.
Who is business analyst?
A business analyst is a professional who analyzes business processes, identifies needs, and recommends solutions to help organizations achieve their goals and improve efficiency. They bridge the gap between business stakeholders and technical teams, ensuring that projects align with business objectives. Business analysts play a crucial role in requirements gathering, project management, and process improvement within an organization.
Basic aspects in a business analyst's work.
1. Identification of needs and requirements. A business analyst works with stakeholders to identify and understand their needs and requirements. 2. Business process analysis. A business analyst studies and analyzes existing business processes in an organization, identifies bottlenecks and opportunities for improvement. 3. Creating requirements. A business analyst develops detailed requirements for a project, product or system. These requirements describe the functionality, characteristics, and behavior of the solution. 4. Requirements management. The business analyst monitors changes and updates of requirements during the project development process, ensuring their consistency and understanding among all stakeholders. 5. Risk and opportunity assessment. The business analyst analyzes the risks and opportunities associated with the project and develops strategies for their management. 6. Communication and coordination. The business analyst ensures effective interaction between different stakeholders to ensure understanding and coordination of requirements. 7. Testing and verification of requirements. A business analyst participates in the testing process to ensure that the requirements meet the real solution. 8. Participation in strategic planning. A business analyst can play a role in the development of strategic plans and strategic management of the organization. Business analysts help businesses better understand their needs, develop effective solutions, and manage projects. This is a key role in the field of IT and project management.
There are only 2 reasons why a business initiates a transition. 1. To solve the problem. 2. To use the opportunity. Requirements in business analysis. Business requirements 1 level.
Business requirements are what a business needs. For example, if we want to increase the number of subscribers by 50%.
Stakeholders requirements 2 level.
This is exactly how we want to do it. Requirements of interested parties, also known as stakeholder requirements, refer to the needs, expectations, and constraints that various stakeholders have concerning a project, product, or service. Interested parties can include a wide range of individuals, groups, or entities who have an interest or involvement in the outcome of the project. These stakeholders can be internal or external to the organization and may include customers, end users, employees, regulators, suppliers, shareholders, and more.
Requirements for the solution 3 level.
3.1 Functional requirements. These are the functions that will be in the system. Functional requirements are what the system does. Example of functional requirements for an online store. User registration. Users can create accounts by entering their name, email address, and password. 3.2 Non-functional requirements. They are always technical, affects the perception of the system, created in the presence of the company's technical specialists. Non-functional requirements are how well the system does it. Non-functional requirements are the conditions or capabilities that a system must have, or the Constraints that it must follow. Performance is like a project or a system loads quickly. Accessibility is, for example, 99.99% within a year. The system will be available to users. Scalability is how the system copes with increased load, code quality, security, localization. Interface requirements are, for example, fonts, contrast, etc. How the system handles errors. Special features for the visually impaired, and the like.
Transitional requirements non-level.
Describes the transition from the current state to their future. After execution, they cease to exist. For example, database migration. When the migration is completed, a requirement no longer exists.
Methods of collecting requirements.
Cast dev or interview, interface analysis, document analysis, competitor analysis, workshop, focus groups with users, questionnaires, and more.
Verification of requirements.
This is an internal process in which we make up requirements for requirements. We check our requirements for compliance with the rules. It should be complete, discussed, not contradictory, so that they can be evaluated.
Requirements validation.
This is an external process in which you check that the requirements that you have written are really needed by the client.
What is user story?
This is a brief description of the system's functionality. From the user's perspective, it explains why a particular feature is needed for the user. It is always described in business or everyday language. For example, as a user, I want to add items to my cart to purchase them. Invest. Invest is an acronym to define the characteristics of well-formulated user stories in agile development. Each letter in the word invest represents a specific characteristic. Independent. User stories should be independent of other user stories. This means they can be developed and implemented separately from other tasks, facilitating parallel work on different user stories. Negotiable. User stories should be flexible and negotiable, not rigidly fixed. This allows the team and the customer to discuss and make changes to the user story throughout the development process. Valuable. User stories should provide value to the user or the customer. They should address a specific user need or problem. Estimable. User stories should be estimable, meaning the development team will be able to assess their complexity and workload. This helps in project planning and management. Small. User stories should be small and manageable. They should not be too large and complex, making it possible to develop them within one sprint or a short time frame. Testable. User stories should be testable, meaning they should have clearly defined criteria for successful. Adhering to these characteristics helps create user stories that are well defined, easy to understand, and can be successfully implemented in the agile development process.
Acceptance criteria in business analysis.
Acceptance criteria in business analysis are a set of conditions or requirements that must be met to consider a deliverable, feature, or project as completed and acceptable. They are often defined in collaboration with stakeholders and serve as a way to objectively determine when the work has been successfully accomplished. Acceptance criteria help ensure that the solution or product aligns with the expectations and needs of the business and its stakeholders. These criteria typically detail specific functionalities, performance benchmarks, quality standards, or other measurable attributes that need to be satisfied for the project to be considered finished. For example, when a user fills out the registration form and submits it, their information is stored in the database.
User story mapping.
User story mapping, a technique in agile development that helps to visualize and organize user stories in the form of a map. In order to better understand the sequence and priority of product development, the user story map displays the various stages of user interaction with the product, as well as user stories associated with these stages. This helps the team to better understand how the user will use the product and in what sequence the functions should be developed. The benefits of user story mapping include a better understanding of user needs, an orderly development sequence, and clearer prioritization. This method helps teams create products that better meet user expectations.
User story mapping consists of several key elements.
1. List of user stories. This is a list of all user stories that are related to a product or project. Each user story describes a specific action or need of the user. 2. Map or board. This is a visualization that displays user stories and their connections. The map is usually a horizontal space where you can organize user stories by stages or flows of user interaction with the product. 3. Stages of user interaction. This is the division of the map into different stages or stages of user interaction, for example, registration, product search, checkout, and so on. 4. User story on the map. Each user story is placed at the appropriate stage on the map. They are usually presented in the form of cards with a brief description of the user story. 5. Connections and dependencies. You can display connections and dependencies between users on the map. For example, one user story may depend on the completion of another. 6. Priority and ratings. The map may also include information about the priority of each user story and estimates of the complexity or time required to implement them. 7. Discussion and planning. User story mapping is often accompanied by discussion and planning to determine which user stories should be developed first and which can be postponed. These elements help the team to better understand and organize the work on the product, taking into account the needs of users and business goals.
Decomposition of user story.
User story decomposition is the process of splitting large and complex user stories into smaller and manageable tasks or subtasks. This method helps to plan and manage product development more effectively. Decomposition is usually carried out at the stage of preparation for development or sprint planning in agile methodology.
The advantages of user story decomposition include:
1. Improved manageability. Large user stories can be difficult to evaluate and develop. By breaking them down into small tasks, the team can more accurately evaluate them and manage the development process. 2. Increased transparency. Small tasks are more visible, and their execution is easier to track and control. 3. Improving the distribution of tasks. By breaking user stories into subtasks, it is possible to better distribute work among team members. 4. Clarification of requirements. A detailed breakdown of the user story allows you to more accurately determine what is required for its implementation. Example of user story decomposition. The original user story. As a user, I want to be able to place an order in the shopping cart. Decomposed user story. 1. As a user, I want to see a list of products in the cart. 2. As a user, I want to add items to the cart. 3. As a user, I want to remove items from the cart. 4. As a user, I want to specify the number of items in the cart. 5. As a user, I want to recalculate the total cost of the order in the cart.
A simple and complex user story can be defined in terms of decomposition as follows.
1. Simple user story. A simple user story usually has a small amount of work and a small complexity. It can be implemented relatively quickly and easily without the need for additional subtasks. Simple user stories do not require deep decomposition and can cover 1 or 2 small actions or functions. 2. Complex user story. A complex user story has a larger amount of work and a high degree of complexity. It may include several interrelated functions or actions that require a more detailed decomposition. Complex user stories may require splitting into several subtasks so that the team can work on them more efficiently. The decomposition of complex user stories into smaller and manageable tasks becomes important for effective development management and allows the team to more accurately determine what steps need to be taken to complete a complex task.
What is use case?
A use case is a technique in the field of systems analysis and design used to describe the functionality of a system from the perspective of its interaction with actors, users, or other systems. Use cases help define how the system will be used and what tasks it should perform. The key elements of a use case include name, a brief and informative name for the use case, actors, a list of users or roles participating in the use case, description, a detailed description of the usage scenario, including a sequence of steps, preconditions, conditions that must be met before the use case can be executed, post-conditions, conditions that must be met after the completion of the use case, alternate paths, possible alternative execution paths for the use case if the main scenario is disrupted, exceptions, possible exceptions or errors that may occur during the execution of the use case, priority, an assessment of the importance of the use case for the business or project, also may be included complex, stakeholders, creation date, author, version, references.
Adding information about normal, alternate, and negative error flows to the attributes of a use case.
This is the main scenario of executing the use case. It describes the sequence of steps that a user or the system follows under normal conditions. The normal flow represents the ideal usage scenario without errors or exceptions. This is a scenario that differs from the normal flow, but is not considered an error. It describes alternative actions that can occur during the execution of the use case. For example, it could be an alternative way to perform a specific action. This is a scenario describing situations in which the use case ends with an error or failure. It includes actions that are taken when something goes wrong and the system cannot complete the use case in the normal manner. Including these flows allows for a more comprehensive and detailed description of various usage scenarios and accounts for error scenarios, which is important for system analysis and design.
Prioritization in business analysis.
Prioritization in business analysis. is important to determine which tasks, requirements, or projects should be completed first. This allows for optimizing the allocation of resources, budget, and efforts to achieve key business goals by assigning the highest priority to important elements of a project or task. You can focus your efforts on addressing the most critical issues and achieving the maximum business impact.